everyone, and welcome to this panel which is being recorded on a Sunday afternoon. And we have some very, should I call you young reporters? Yes, you are. You do look young. So you're young reporters here with us, young journalists who are going to talk to us about reporting during COVID. The reason why we are having this panel in TMR is because obviously we are going through a unprecedented pandemic situation where everything is shut down, but journalism, like medical and other services, is considered an essential service. So journalists have been actually out there doing stories and risking their lives while doing their work. And I thought it would be a great opportunity to sort of talk to these journalists who do field reporting and also figure out what sort of difficulties have they faced, how are their organizations working now, and some other related things, their experiences while reporting. So it will be a sort of a free form sort of a moderation session here. To kick off, I will ask everyone to introduce themselves rather quickly. So I'll start with Vijayta. Hi, Vijayta.
Hi. I'm Vijayta. I'm a journalist at scroll.in. It's an independent news website, and I'm based in Delhi.
Zeba.
I am Zeba Warsi. I'm with CNN News 18. I'm based out of Delhi, and I'll cover it.
Charan.
Hi, I'm Charan Teja. I am with the News Minute for the last 3 years. I'm based out of Hyderabad. Currently off from Hyderabad.
Ayush?
Hi, I'm a reporter with Newslaundry and usually cover media, politics, and human rights.
Wonderful. And I'm Meghnad. I am associate editor at Newslaundry, and I am your moderator for today. Okay, let's kick it off. I think I want to go with Vijayta first because she came first. I just want to start with you to actually understand, just in general, a very broad question for all of you. How has your experience been since lockdown was imposed? Actually, since the epidemic hit India?
I think the lockdown was imposed at a time when journalists in Delhi are still grappling with the coverage of the Delhi riots. So for us, the lockdown kind of put a pause to all of that. We couldn't step out anymore, couldn't do much ground reportage for a very long time. And then you had such a long time went by where we couldn't step out of our homes. So during that time, there were a couple of times that I did step out to report and saw that the roads were deserted. You needed a pass every time you had to get out. So I think it was an experience where we were just adapting to this new change every day, this new way of how the world would function. That includes how, working within the newsroom where you're at home, but there's still a newsroom virtually. You get on to like a conference call on Hangouts or whatever in the morning and in the evening, and you discuss what everyone's going to work on. So it's just been a lot of adapting as a journalist.
Charan, what has your experience been? You are based in Hyderabad, right?
Yeah, it was completely unprecedented. Like I thought it would be like, I never expected that this will hit in such a bad way. Like as it was unprecedented. I thought I won't be moving out of Hyderabad. I will be in Hyderabad even if the pandemic or the virus spreads here. But like right in the second week of March, my office gave me work from home option. And by the third week, I had to move off from the area because that was declared as a containment area. And so I just went to my hometown. And
where is that?
It's in northern Telangana. So I started covering reporting from that area, like those 4 or 5 districts mostly. And then, like, if necessarily, I moved to other places.
So for a follow-up question for you, so how was it different from reporting in the cities versus reporting in like tier 2 towns? You were in a tier 2 town, I'm guessing, after that?
Yeah.
How was it different?
Yeah, so like it's I think like people were initially not really bothered as much as they are bothered now. So they should think that this is something that can only affect the urban areas, or they even used to think that people used to think that like whenever I encounter people at larger gatherings, for suppose at places where the government officials or the government bodies distribute these fertilizers or all, like I used to ask the farmers, they used to say that yeah, this is something that can only come to Hyderabad or urban people, though, and it can only affect the people, those who have diabetes, sugar, lack of
information. Zeba, tell us what has your experience been all these months?
Much the same as reporters have been saying, it was pretty unprecedented. That was the word of the season back then, unprecedented. Because we never expected to be even given the option of working from home ever, right? And like Vijayta pointed out, we were all still covering the aftermath of the Delhi riots, the anti-CA protesters. So the first impact that I think the lockdown had was on follow-up stories, not just the investigation that was underway, but also a lot of relief and rehabilitation work that was going on, a lot of follow-up stories with respect to how the families are trying to piece up their life together. So that suddenly, that came to a halt, a very sudden halt. And then initially in the last week of March, when the lockdown had just kicked in, that was the time which was very uncertain. We didn't know exactly what we were expected to do. Most of our organizations were working at minimum strength in the newsroom, and even reporters were asked to go out in field, for a specific amount of time to just go out, perhaps for a live broadcast, return home. We were introduced to the concept of mobile journalism, which has been in use for quite some time, but now it became a necessity. So all of us had at least one corner in our house which we thought would be decent enough to go live from. So I think the last week of March was all about adapting to that change. And I think reporting on COVID has also evolved over the months. What we did in March, and then we tried to do better in April. And April, May, June, I think these 3 months were all about field reporting. But I'm sure we'll be discussing that in this webinar ahead, how difficult and how many more challenges we faced back then. But March was all about evolving from that change.
You use the W word. You use the W word. So the W word is webinar. And whenever someone uses the word webinar, I call them out, because everybody is getting tired of webinars. And I've used it so many times now. Ayush, how has your experience been in all these months?
Yeah, it's not been very pleasant, the switch from pre-pandemic to post-pandemic. Actually, not even post; it's during the pandemic. But not only in ways we cover what we cover, but what we choose to cover. So, of course, we have to sit at home, try to evolve, push out copies by talking to people over the phone, whereas earlier you had to actually go and meet them. So now when I actually read my stories from, in the immediate aftermath of the pandemic or the lockdown, I can tell there's a difference. Some details are missing because the interactions obviously get diluted. So that way it hampers your work. But in also what we do cover, as Vijayta said, we were covering the riots in March, and I think we only returned to it in July. So there was a whole lag of 3-4 months. But fortunately, in my case, since I also cover the media, besides that, I do a lot of ground reporting. I use that pandemic to switch from ground reporting to cover the media. So in that space, in those 3 months, I started covering the layoffs in the media, or how the media was covering the whole pandemic, which was in itself a great story, back in April and May. So that's how, in quantitative ways and qualitative ways, our whole field seems to change.
Zeba, my next question for you, and I think I'll take it to others as well, is about how your organization has been dealing with this, right? So as you said, as a person who works with CNN, IBN, you now have a corner in your house where you are now doing lives from. I'm pretty sure a large organization like CNN, IBN took a while to sort of transition. Because you might have some set management protocols and reporting protocols which sort of might have broken down. How did that happen, and how fast were you able to adapt to this? And have you still adapted to this, or is it still like?
Well, it was, of course, it was all very sudden. But I think even before the lockdown was officially announced, perhaps even before the Janta curfew, when we were discussing COVID-19 and restrictions were already in place in states like Delhi, we started phasing out, the ships. The ships were already divided. Reporters were asked not to come to the newsroom unless absolutely essential, because, we're the ones who are out in the field, so our exposure is different to those who are in the newsroom. We have two offices in Twin City, so the entire staff was divided in these two buildings to also ensure that the news channel will function in any case. We had two different newsrooms operating at the same time. So I would say that the response by my organization was fairly, I think it was very well executed, especially in March, because that was when it hit. So, and which is why we did not really face that sort of trouble which some news organizations face, especially in electronic media, where they had some, people reporting positive of COVID-19, and then the contact tracing was very difficult. For us, at one given time, there were only, say, 10 people working in the newsroom. So that shift would not be allowed to come for the next 1 or 2 weeks. So I think that way, of course, that was a decision that was taken by the management. As far as reporters are concerned, we were asked to avoid going to crowded places. I remember 20th March, if I'm not mistaken, is when the Nirbhaya convicts were executed. And it was a big story for TV, and of course we were all sent to cover it. We went to take the reactions from the family, from the parents, and that was when the lockdown was not in place, but we all knew that there is the threat of a pandemic, right? The WHO had already announced it to be a pandemic. And the way the media was covering it at that time, I very clearly remember I gave a call to my assignment head and I said, there's a lot of crowd over here, and I'll do my lives from a different location. I'm not going to be right there where all the media cameras are. And they were very, very cooperative. And they said that goes without saying, because we only have to report the story. We don't have to be a part of the whole mess. I think that is an important call that reporters on the field had to take right at the very beginning, because I think no one was taking the pandemic seriously. No one still takes the pandemic seriously, for that matter, the way especially electronic media functions on the ground. So right from then, I think, at least as far as my experience goes, I faced a lot of cooperation from my organization, and they in fact encouraged us to take precautions on the field as well as in the field.
So, so you are from broadcast, so I think you have adapted in a certain way, and the other people here are all from digital media. So like Charan, can you also tell us how the News Minute has adapted to this whole thing, and has there been really any difference pre-pandemic and post-pandemic in the reporters' lives specifically?
Yeah, of course, there is a difference compared to the pre-pandemic life of a reporter and post-pandemic life of a reporter, and the organization as well. So even before these things are getting worse, so we were asked or given instructions to mail saying that like giving informations regarding do's and don'ts. Okay, and every day we have to anyway give the information about the tasks that are going to be taken by the reporter. So if the concerned editor finds it, it is a risky thing. So obviously they will ask us to see if there is any other way to get the report done. And if if there is a definite need to go to the ground, yes, we were asked to take certain precautions that are definitely required. Yes. So yeah, that and all there. So for suppose there is initial days, even I was in like I just moved in the first week after 20th of March. I moved to my hometown. So from where this Karimnagar is some 100 kilometers from my place. So at that point of time, we don't even know what is containment zone. I mean, no one knows like how that what is the rule or what consists the containment zone. So like I informed that like since that is it took like completely different shape when that tabligh thing came in, and that people who came from the other country moved to Karimnagar through a train. So I thought of going there and reporting from there, but since the scene appeared very much risky, so I was asked not to go there, but to get in touch with the district collector and police officers and DMH, district medical and health officer, to know what all happening. So I even used my sources from that place to know what exactly happening on the ground. I think that's the first district where the officials have, in fact, did the home delivery of groceries to the each and every household, irrespective of the family, whether one of their family fall for the COVID or not. Like they like.
But
like,
with
they have squared an area.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I wanted to ask you. So with regards to the editorial at the News Minute, so how were changes there? Like when did you go work from home exactly? What point did you?
From what from March 12, I myself work from home.
Right. So this was before the lockdowns. I think it was similar to what Newslaundry also did. I think Ayush, we went for work from home on the 15th of March, if I'm not wrong, right?
Yeah, I remember we had Please go ahead.
Hello, Meghnad. Meghnad. So work from home was given even before that.
Right.
Since the office and the staff are very lesser in Hyderabad bureau, so we all of us started working from home only after March 9th.
Right.
Yeah. For me, it was after March 12th I started working from home.
Okay. Yeah, Ayush, you were saying?
It was a small bureau, like.
Right.
Yeah, we switched. I remember we switched a week or so before the lockdown. And on the day the government fell in MP, because that's how I've marked it in my head, on March 20th, we had a meeting where we made decisions that editorially we shifted from, because our edit meetings are always in the office. So that shifted entirely to digital. And over the next few months, I think we worked completely from home. I think the entirety of April and May, unless of course the physical presence was unavoidable in case of certain podcasts where some of you had to come to office once every week. But it's only after June that even I started venturing out for ground reports. And the organization was, really came to our rescue in a sense, because we didn't want to, while we were reporting on the riots and we were going to Northeast Delhi almost every second day, we didn't want to come back to our homes and meet our parents. So me and Basant, who were reporting on the riots, we were living out of the office for more than a month, which is, I think, quite a good call from the organization. And again, when one of our colleagues tested positive, I think in late May, she had, some decent assistance from the organization. So in terms of both shift and support, Newslaundry seemed to be on the right track.
I agree. I concur to what you just said.
And of course,
I also work here.
We can't say it's bad because we work here, no? So.
But Vijayta, what has it been like in Scroll?
Oh, I think it's not been very different for us, because we anyway used to have a morning call and an evening call where we would discuss who's doing what. And a lot of us are most of us are based in Delhi, but some are based in Bombay, some are based in, we have one reporter, Arunab Saikia in Assam. We have one reporter in Kashmir. So everyone's kind of spread out. So we were following this morning and evening meeting schedule. But earlier we used to be in office and attend that meeting virtually or over the phone. Now it's just we're at home doing that. So I don't think much has changed for us in that sense. It's just that now, along with work, you have to do the bartan, jhadu, pocha, cooking and all of that, right? And that is extremely exhausting for reporters who are not used to being in their houses. They're used to being on the field, doing field work. But now the field is your living room, your kitchen, you know. And I think another thing that I would like to bring up, which I hope other journalists, agree with me or have to or add to it, is source building. For a journalist, building sources is the most important thing, and we need to step out in order to do that. Building sources on over the phone, which is what has happened since the pandemic, has been incredibly tough because it's also very crucial to build trust. That's how you build a source. So I think that has been extremely challenging, and I don't know if other reporters, I'm sure they have equally, interesting stories to add to something like that, because we're not stepping out as often. So our means of getting information, that's also getting limited, I feel.
So I'll just ask you a little bit more about what you mean by source building, because I mean, people might not know what you mean by that.
Of course. So a source can be anyone, meeting people, meeting officials, meeting activists for work, or even people you interview, like say, or police officials. Anyone, anywhere, anyhow can be a source of information for you as a journalist.
And physical presence is very important for that.
Extremely important.
Absolutely.
Extremely
but so, it's very interesting how it's sort of the entire world has gone virtual. And I was also thinking about the fact that productivity wise, I feel like I personally have become more productive because I think there are less distractions. Or the other reason might be that there is no difference between a work start time and an end time now. So essentially everybody's at home. So the work is at home. So although that border of, going to work and coming back has completely been removed. So then there is this dissonance sort of a thing that happening where when does work start? When does it end? Or does it happen in like two phases or whatever? So how has that been for you, Vijayta?
So I know that work starts at 10, but I don't know what time it ends. And that's kind of been a challenge, because there've been times when, because I'm at home, I can spend the nights working, or I can spend, really early morning working on a story. So in that sense, it's been very exhausting to be quite honest. There's no set timing or set pattern to it. On the other hand, you're just like, okay, you're at home. Why not just finish this off instead of leaving it pending for tomorrow? And tomorrow you can start working on something new. So that's also another thing that's been. So I think productivity-wise, we've really tried to maintain the rhythm that we were maintaining before the pandemic started. But I think that my organization has been very understanding when it comes to having a slow day, not just because it's a slow news day, but because you have a ton of housework that you need to do. And that is equally important.
Absolutely.
So, that's what it's been like.
Zeba, same question for you, but I also want to throw you one question which one of the attendees have asked. This question, if I'll just read it out. It's from an anonymous attendee. First, thank you to the journalists who still find a way to report from the field. I'd like to know how your organizations are taking care of you by covering your mental health and COVID-related health coverage. Second, I imagine that there's a grim prospect of layoffs even pre-pandemic. So how is your organization ensuring that the reporters are given fair financial compensation and support from work from home? So first question, how has the work-life balance been for you? And then second, this.
Okay, so first, taking from where Vijayta also, she was headed, the whole productivity aspect. I remember in March and even the first half of April, you remember how social media was all about their Dalgona coffees and how people, especially I have friends in Bombay, I'm from Bombay, so a lot of my non-media friends, for them, lockdown was like a break. They all were working from home, adapting to new things, making banana bread. For us, it was much more exhausting. There's no start or end time for a 24/7 news channel, and for reporters in general, I think we grew to our phones to a degree of threatening our mental health altogether. But during coronavirus outbreak, because there was just so much information that was coming in, and it was not a story that was only based out of one place in Delhi, but it was, and for those of us who were covering not just the tally, the numbers, the health implications, and then of course for India, it became more of a humanitarian crisis as well. So for us, the whole story became our lives. I remember I reached a point where I was like, I can't take this anymore. I need a break. So I called up my office. I'm like, I'm not working tomorrow because it's getting to me. Because we were constantly getting updates. We were constantly, giving out information. By April, all of us were out in the field as well. So it was definitely difficult. It was quite a challenge to adapt to the story, because not only because how big the story was, but because it sort of transcends across beats. You were not only restricted to our beat, it is everyone's beat now. Your second question, the guest question, well, as far as COVID protection safety measures are concerned, the concept of safety kits were introduced in our organization, where every time the car comes, another aspect is, we were asked not to use public transport by mid-March. Everyone was given a pickup and a drop. And not just the ones who were coming to the newsroom, but the reporters also, instead of directly meeting our camera persons and crew on the field, we were picked up from our homes and then taken to the field. And for anything else. So we had that entire fleet service at our disposal, which was, I think, very, very important, because at that time when public transport was still functioning, it was still a risk, because you are exposing yourself to more number of people. So that was one step, I think, which the organization did very well in taking. The second aspect is safety kits. Reporters were given a food kit because during the lockdown, we had no access to food. There was absolutely nothing available, no hotels, no restaurants, no shop also, to even buy a packet of chips. So we had a food kit which had like biscuits, chips, a Glucon-D packet to sustain us. And then we had a safety kit, which was essentially masks, gloves, and sanitizers. Sanitizers became a part of our life like never before. So that was provided by the organization, and I think that was a very important measure which sort of helped us. Apart from that, a couple of our colleagues, who tested positive for COVID-19, their health, their families were tested by the organization, and also giving them complete medical assistance. Our HR was very active. We have our own internal portal where we symptom checker, where we have to update it every day as to how we're feeling. And if there is any discrepancy or any sort of symptom alert, then we get a call from our HR on that very day. Then we have an in-house doctor.
Is this like an Arogya Setu app or something, like which you have to
It's not an
register
Arogya Setu app. It's more of an internal organization app, which only the HR is keeping a track of us and our family who's living with us. So that I think is a very, very good measure. Yeah. And we have an in-house doctor. So the in-house doctor will always ask us what sort of, if you have a fever, when did it start? And then he prescribes us some basic medicine. If we have a fever 2 days or 3 days in a row, then some of us have been tested as well. So I think with that, as far as that aspect is concerned, that the organization's response has been commendable, because they ensured, because I think that was very important. As far as we're assured of our safety, health-wise, we wouldn't have been able to report. So these were the measures that were taken.
Charan, I just wanted to ask you a similar question, but CNN News 18 comes with a lot of resources also. It is a giant organization with a lot of resources, but when it comes to smaller organizations like ours or News Minute, no, Scroll is not a small organization anymore. I'm sorry, but News Minute. It is okay. Fine. We will see if that is true. Charan, so can you tell me when it comes to safety of reporters, what has TNM been doing for you? And also, I would also like to throw the same question that our anonymous attendee has asked to you as well about mental health. What has your organization or you yourself, how have you been dealing with it, and mental health wise, how has it been?
First thing, as you said, Firstly, I think it was one of the first organizations to give work from home option, right? In fact, even Newslaundry reported that. We were asked to go for reporting unless it's completely not risky. First thing. Second thing, when it comes to mental health issues, one of the seniors from the office, deputy editor or editor, will separately reach out to the reporters and ask about the people, how are they doing, and if they are feeling any, physical health issues or mental health issues. So if there are any, if someone complains about the symptoms, even normal cough has also threatened us many times. So, we started feeling that it's I think I started, I might get COVID because today morning I went there. I talked to this person. I stand near this crowd in front of this hospital, so I might have got it.
Right.
Even the normal, I don't know, even the normal cough was also. Even my family started joking me that whenever I got cough. Okay, nothing happens. Don't worry. But when they say that, I used to, they don't know what really it is. I'm just going out and I'm engaging with the people who could be the potential carriers of the virus. But still, I mean, it's because of the lack of knowledge that still people till last 2 months. I mean, and by the time of the unlocking, the subsequent unlocking, people started believing the gravity of the disease.
I actually agree with you because, it was very surprising that during the lockdown, even 3 phases of lockdown, and I think it was for 1.5 months strict lockdown, people were like, ho raha hai, and we're not taking it very seriously. But now when the unlock has actually started, now is when people are like, oh my God, something is happening. It's a really weird sort of situation that sort of we are in. But Ayush, can you also talk to us a little bit about mental health? Because, Basant was telling me this earlier, and I think you will also like to elaborate on that. Basant was saying how, especially for journalists in Delhi, it sort of the trauma started right from JNU and Jamia. Then there were attacks, so you had to be there. That whole thing escalated. Then there were CA protests, then Delhi riots, then this pandemic. So it has been a constant hammering over the heads of reporters, essentially, who are going there on the field to cover it, right? How does this affect you, and what do you have to say about that?
Well, it can produce a sort of a fatigue, which when you end the whole season of doing those kind of reporting and you sit down, it doesn't, of course, I think it doesn't hit you when you're reporting, when you're going out and when you're writing things. But once you start taking rest is when everything that you've probably, crushed to your subconscious come out, and then you feel rather off. So those things happen, but how the pandemic, I think, made it worse because it was almost a forced period of, being almost incarcerated at your home. So when during the CA protest, which was parallel to the Delhi elections, and then came the riots, we were doing everything on the ground. We were going out. But once the lockdown hit, it was almost a 180-degree switch, and you had to stay at home. So, it is a kind of a high ground reporting to an extent. And when you're covering something as grave as an election and a riot in a month, the next month, just simply switching to sitting at home and calling people up is quite a disappointment. It's a huge fall. So the fact that there was a fatigue, and over that there was this almost a very sudden switch, both impacted our mental health. But then I think the organization I mean, I don't think Newslaundry has any, for instance, a set policy on how that will be taken, but editors were gracious enough that if you went to them and you told them that, you know, we have some sort of a fatigue, there's almost an arresting feeling of not working for some time, they would understand. So that was that conversation between the editor and the reporter is very crucial. And in the Indian newsroom, especially, which is not evolved that much to mental health. But as long as that conversation goes, I think we have decent parameters.
I think Charan was also like talking about the same thing, that conversation about between the editor and reporter. But Ayush, one question for you from one of the attendees is thank you for the great work you do. Vasant and Ayush closely followed the Delhi riots and brought some great reports. How did the pandemic impact the ways they connected with the people for information, and what would they have done differently if not for the pandemic? So that question for you, and also I will come to Vijayta with the same question.
Well, it did not impact the way in which we connect with people, and we made sure consciously that we don't let it impact us, which is why we, even for something as simple as, say, a police comment, which you can do over email or over a call, we would go to the police station actually, you know. So we would deliberately like to step out and not be cowed down by the whole restriction thing. And by the way, this we were doing in July, so by the time the restrictions had almost disappeared. But of course, the problems that did came when you went to certain houses and met people. So you had to be careful that even if it's not a great prospect that you were infected and then you went to people's homes, especially in Northeast Delhi, where people are not very privileged. You know, if you go to a house that is not very privileged, you make sure that you do nothing that might infect them. But so therefore you have to take all the precautions. But in the way we were reporting, it was actually an advantage in that me and Basant were living together. And I think living together and working on a project for a month was a great way for us to always, in a way, work and throw ideas at each other and, you know, just discuss how we are going to do about a project. So it would have been different had we lived at home and had our conversations over the phone. So that's the answer, yeah.
Vijayta, what do you think? Same question to you as well.
Yeah, so let's rewind a bit. And this is just when the lockdown has been imposed. This is around March. So maybe fast forward a bit to April. So April, May is the time when we just hear snatches of information that hundreds of people are being picked up by the police. This is in, Northeast Delhi in connection with the riots. They're just being picked up. They're being told, oh, come to the police station. We just need to ask you a few questions, but then they get arrested. This is what we hear from their family members. But because of the lockdown, we're just getting snatches of information about this, which is why one of my stories then was about how the investigation is being conducted at a very preliminary stage. So all of this was done over the phone because I could not step out. Nobody could step out at that time. And over the phone, it's really tricky to, if you're speaking to a family member, it's extremely tricky to get details because you not only have to ask them about, what they may or may not have experienced while the riots were happening, but also what happened when their family member was picked up by the police, the exact detail, the time, the date. Do they remember the name of the police official? Were they in uniform or were they in, in civvies? What were they wearing? How many of them were there? It's a very cumbersome process to get information over the phone. Especially these are people who are still in shock, right? So it's a very slow, you have to be very gentle with them. So that I think is the first, how it was initially. And then later on, when things started to open up, I was able to go out and meet people, people in the police or meet lawyers, etc., for whatever, to exchange information or anything like that. But I feel that had there not been any pandemic, all journalists across media organizations would have really just been out there pushing harder for stories, there would have been more pressure on Delhi police to give out more information. As Ayush had mentioned, that they would go to the police station. But if I wasn't able to do that, I would either, make a phone call or send an email with queries. And they wouldn't answer their phone call, and they wouldn't, mail queries. So it's just, you're just shouting in the dark. That's how you feel half the time. Had there not been any pandemic, I feel like reporters and their work would have put more pressure on the authorities to really, be held accountable.
I actually agree with this, because if you even look at the parliament right now, I mean, you're talking about the Delhi riots, but if you take something even like the parliament, it becomes so difficult, right? Ek to parliament was not working for so long, but now that it is working, there are all of these rules and restrictions about who can go in, who cannot go out, how it was going to work. The whole thing has changed. Zeba, can you give us an instance of a very challenging situation or a story that you did during this period, which sort of affected you, or was just really difficult to pull off in a pandemic situation?
I think the one story, like all of us have been talking about, that has been severely hit by the pandemic is the follow-up of the Delhi riot. Now, there's one story that I was following up, and I was finding it very difficult to follow it up on the phone. Gulshan, a riot victim who lost her father in Bihar, and his charred remains still remained in police custody. She couldn't bury him. She couldn't say goodbye to her father because of the coronavirus restrictions. And she would call me and she's like, I'm still waiting. Her lawyer is still struggling. The court was still shut. I would follow up with the police officer as to what is happening with the case. I remember I did 4 follow-up stories on her, and then finally she was able to bury him in the latter half of May. So it was over 2 months since her father was burnt alive, and all she had left of him was a burnt leg. And she couldn't even pay him the last respects with dignity. That is the least that she wanted to do. And also her journey home, because she lived in UP. She would come even in the middle of restrictions, hiring a cab which she can't afford. Most of the riot victims at that time didn't even receive any form of compensation. So this was one story. If there were no restrictions, then we can only imagine how many more such stories would have come out, of victims trying to piece their life together. The sheer injustice of it all, it's blinding. It's very enraging that a story like this did not get the kind of coverage that it deserved sustainably, consistently, because of the coronavirus. Another story that I did was the rise in domestic violence cases, and that was, I think, the first story that I did while working from home. But had there been no coronavirus pandemic, we would have been able to be out there trying to interview people, interview women who were trying to reach out, try to interview the Women and Child Development Ministry, the National Commission for Women who were receiving these complaints in large numbers. Instead, all I could do was speak to victims on the phone, speak to survivors on the phone, report their conversations on the phone, get reaction from the ministry on the phone, and getting reactions from officials on the phone or via email is very, very difficult, as opposed to meeting them in person and asking them questions. That is an entirely different process, and many a times most stories fall short because we are unable to be there in person and ask these questions.
That makes more sense. I just wanted to ask the same question to Charan about a story that you have covered over this period, which you would like to share with us, and how challenging it was.
I've met Narega laborers, and I happened to meet BD workers, women BD workers in rural areas like Toward Northern Telangana. And I even met the people who were walking throughout. So what was difficult is I wanted to show that these many people are walking in this scorching heat and all. But I was asked by them that, sir, photo don't khichiye. The moment I put out something on Twitter or some report comes in, the local authorities will be informed and they will be taken to some government organized quarantine center where they will have to be there. So they don't know like what will happen, like since they don't have any clarity about what is quarantine and everything. So all that they want is like it's fine even if we are suffering by walking, but please don't write our name. Even in fact, day before yesterday also I met a couple of street hawkers who came from Madhya Pradesh. So before talking to me, they asked me some 10 times, कुछ लफड़ा हो गया, like will it suffer, make us find us difficult, like police वाले आ जाएगा और we have to leave from here, book से मत जाएगा. So that there were many situations where I contemplated whether to put out or not.
Put their names or not.
Yeah, and the other thing, so it's also a question of the credibility, right? Like sometimes even you will find it as fiction. Like many Indians find it. Many stories of the migrants were like, no, this is not the case. They are doing too much. Many times we saw that. So in the case of this NREGA, National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, these workers were not being paid for last 1 month. That was at the peak of the lockdown. So all of them are from the lower income groups. So for them, if they want, it's like we want to talk to you, but what will happen? Will you get us the salaries? Will you get us the wages? No, I can report it. By that, people officials might know, and that certainly they may certainly address your question. But like that, everyone will come. What is so special about you? So one thing is that the reporters on the ground, there was an increasing burden on the reporters. Most of the time, they started thinking that we are the representatives of the government, of the concerned government. Right. Okay. So sort of they started thinking that like soon after we go there, like somewhere from Adilabad, like that is in Telangana, that is very interior, Adilabad, Asifabad. It comes in the central India, like almost corners of the central India. So from there, their lives are almost every time that sort of uncertainty, pandemic kind of things will be there. Okay. Lack of healthcare and all those things are there. Like we can imagine what if some of them or one of them from that area gets the COVID-19.
So essentially, like in the panel that I had done earlier as well, this point was brought up that, in the Northeast, for instance, in places like Manipur, people didn't feel any difference because they were already struggling to complete their primary needs, etc. So this was essentially no different than how it would be, just that there were restrictions of movement, right? It's very interesting over this period of time, and I want to throw this one general question to everyone here, and then we will close this, is that over the period of time since I think March, ever since the lockdown came in the initial months till I think for like a month and a half, max a month, where people were just focused on the pandemic, how it's shaping up, talking to doctors, vaccine kab aayega, ye spread kaise ho raha hai. There were obviously some very ghastly communal attempts also about targeting specific groups of people, etc. But after that, now I don't see much happening because technically we are much worse off now. I just want to ask everyone here, is there a pandemic fatigue setting in, and is it that people just don't think it's news anymore? And I'm a little confused because I would expect like a constant ticker to go on and that to be in the news all the time. Like it is, killing so many people now. What do you think? Like anybody who wants to give it that a shot?
I think.
Well, definitely, okay.
Yeah,
Sorry,
Zeba.
go ahead, Zeba. Go ahead.
Yeah, Zeba.
So I think there is a pandemic fatigue, not only in the way it's being covered, but also the way people are dealing with it. Like, I feel personally that during the lockdown, because there was a government-imposed lockdown, people felt that, oh, coronavirus is out here. But now when I go on the field, it's so scary because every day we see a massive spike in numbers across India. Even in Delhi now, there is a threat of a second wave. Perhaps this is a second wave as far as coronavirus cases is concerned. But you take a stroll at Rashtrapati Bhavan in the evening, India Gate, or Karol Bagh, or any of the localities, people are not wearing masks. Reporters on the ground, sadly, are also not wearing a mask. The way we're crowding in, still shoving our mics onto people for bites. Everything is almost as if it's back to normal when it shouldn't be, because like you said, the sheer threat of coronavirus continues and it has only worsened over a period of time. And now is the time when we should still continue doing stories from the economic aspect of coronavirus, because businesses are still struggling. We do have a very big economic story to cover, traders, retailers, especially in cities. These are stories that need to come out. And perhaps in this month, I think our focus as far as covering coronavirus should be on the economic fallout of coronavirus. But that isn't happening the way it should. And you're right, because perhaps there is a pandemic fatigue, or perhaps people are just not taking it seriously anymore. I think they've had enough of coronavirus, which is just stupid. It's being stupid.
Exactly. And I'll actually let Vijayta have the last word here, but I absolutely understand where you're coming from when you say it's absolutely stupid, because I don't know if people just suddenly have a death wish, or like they're just going like YOLO, I don't give a shit anymore, I'll just go out and do whatever. And there are these constant numbers which are showing up, which is just showing that the spread is just coming back. In Delhi, which had handled the pandemic like till like a week ago, now they're like talking about a second wave and rising infections and everything. Vijayta?
I just want to, I agree with everything Zeba said, but I just want to point out how when the lockdown first came in, you had press conferences every day by Love Agarwal, who was the health secretary. Every day you would come, he would come along with other officials, to give out, to say something and also say nothing at the same time. That has become so infrequent, and we need more of those right now, because now is the time where you have these rising cases and we need to ask the government questions like, what are you doing to stop this? In Delhi, I'm very skeptical about this first wave, second wave thing, because I don't even think that the first wave ended for a second wave to have, because in the middle, if you look at the Delhi's daily health bulletins, you'll see that their testing had dropped. It saw a drop in RT-PCR testing and an increase in antigen testing. So I feel that we should be skeptical of, cases are rising, there's no doubt about that, but we should be skeptical of this first wave, second wave thing. Yeah. It's as bad as it was.
Yeah.
Can I just add something? Yeah. I think this whole idea of the pandemic fatigue is an absolute myth. And it's a myth created by us, the journalists, because I don't think there's any way for even the mainstream media to gauge whether people are growing tired of their coverage of the pandemic. It's this extension of the same idea that you should put some positive stories on the front page, because if you just serve sad stories, people are going to be sad. I think, for instance, when I think we in the media, we need to ask this question whether the people have become bored of consuming news about the pandemic, which seems to be the most prevalent belief, or whether we in the media have grown bored of covering the pandemic as a whole.
And it's a catch-22 situation.
Yeah. Actually, I would say that. Can I add a point here?
Yeah, Charan.
I would say that at some point of time, media, or maybe a major chunk of media which can influence the news, the headlines, started believing the people's wish that, like, everyone, whoever questions the media or a journalist who are into at least Twitter, when will this vaccine comes? Okay, they'll see some WhatsApp forward. Since Russia has, came up with a vaccine that might come by 15th August, as if that is that independence celebration. Okay, So, so like they started, I mean, I don't blame all, but like a significant chunk has started giving some feel good stories. By this time, it will get over. Okay, by this time, we'll get the vaccine. Or else, by this time, the cases will gradually go down. So that they serve the feeling or the sentiment of the people,
Right.
are the wish of the people. So yeah,
Right.
obviously people will share the positive news. It's all not bad.
Yeah. That's actually where we have to end. My time is up, but thank you so much, everyone, for being a part of this debate. I really hope now that, I mean, we have now crossed 40 lakh cases and so many deaths, and it's like we are now number 2 in the world as far as it comes to caseload. We already had our economic numbers come out, which are not very good. One would hope that the media space in general would actually start covering both of these issues in tandem, but sadly that's not happening, or it's not happening right now, or I don't see it happening. The one hope that we have maybe is some brave journalists like you guys just stepping up and focusing on these things. But thank you so much for coming in, and thank you for your service all of these months, guys. Thank you so much.
Essential service.
Essential services.